This is Basic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
At that time, they were starting to request that we put in Easter eggs, which kind of took the whole idea away. It was supposed to be hidden, and yet it ended up being part of the design at some point.
This is an interview episode of Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Bob Polaro was an Atari employee from 1978 through 1984, where he wrote several programs for Atari Program Exchange, very early programs in the APX catalog, Lemonade, Mugwump, Preschool Games, Reversi, Space Trek, and Dice Poker. He also wrote the States and Capitals and European Countries and Capitals educational programs for the Atari computers, both published by Atari. He programmed several games for the Atari 2600, including Defender and RealSports Volleyball. This interview took place on January 22, 2016. Tell me, before you got hired by Atari, what you were doing and how you ended up with that job.
Okay. Well, we're going pretty far back here.
Yeah.
I started programming in New York, working on accounting applications. And then when I came out here in 77, I got a job at Commodore working on a pet computer because I had a background in doing stock portfolio stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing that, and then I gradually got into doing some gaming, blackjack and things like that, using the pet chiclet keyboard. And then I was there for a short period of time, maybe 6 months, and then there was an ad for game programmers at Atari. They were starting up with the Atari 2600, but I had no experience in machine language on the job market, so they hired me to work on the Atari 800. Programming in BASIC, because that was most of my background, is programming in BASIC. So I did quite a few projects for the Apex catalog, for the BASIC games that were running on the cassette players. I don't know if you remember that.
I do. I've talked to a lot of Apex authors, and so is it basically did they ask you, okay, I mean, your Lemonade program is the first piece of software in the APX catalog, APX number 20001.
Okay.
So did they basically come to you and say, we're doing this catalog of user-written software, we need some, please write something? How did that come?
Yeah, I mean, basically that's what it was. They wanted me to start doing some basic gaming, and I guess it was even before the catalog came out, because I needed something for the computer. They didn't really have any demo software, so it was just something to show. And then the Apex catalog happened, so I did a bunch of those games, and then I got into doing the kind of bit mapping in BASIC with states and capitals and European countries and that kind of thing, using peaks and pokes, which is almost like doing a machine language in BASIC. So I pretty much did quite a few games for the catalog, but then they decided they didn't need it anymore. So I kind of got told that by Dennis Coble that I needed to start developing on 2600, which didn't have any background in that. So the other programmers helped me out getting started. And then I started working with Stunt Cycle, was my first project, which was just the motorcycle jumping over these buses, which was playfield. So I finished that, and that was my first project, but they didn't release it. I don't remember exactly why. Then I started working on RealSports Volleyball, but at the time they didn't call it that. It was just a volleyball game with a square ball. And so I played around with that. And then I believe they wanted me to resurrect Stunt Cycle for the Dukes of Hazzard, which was just coming out in the 70s. And they wanted me to just change the graphics of the motorcycle to the Dukes of Hazzard car and have it jump over a lake instead of buses. So I finished that, but they still didn't release it. And then I got into Defender, which I started designing that project, and Todd Fry was designing Pac-Man at the same time. Mm-hmm. And then they requested us to switch projects. And I didn't want to switch because I already designed Defender and everything. So I wanted to stick with it, and Todd stuck with Pac-Man, whereas it turned out to be a little bit of a mistake.
Because he got royalties on Pac-Man and sold many.
It turned out to be the Pac-Out cartridge, so he got a lot more exposure.
For what it's worth, Defender is a superior game on that platform by quite a lot.
I thought it would just be much more fun to work on it. I already designed it. I really liked the game. I wasn't really into Pac-Man at the time, so I really wanted to stick with it. So that got released, and then shortly after that, they started the royalty program, and a number of the projects got into the pipeline, even though they were already finished. They went back like 6 months, something like that. So I finished Defender, and then they wanted me to resurrect RealSports Volleyball with more lifelike animation and a round ball, that kind of thing. So that got completed. And then from there, I started working a little bit on the Atari 5200, but I didn't get too far with the driving game. And shortly after that, we started. We had a satellite office in Aptos because I lived over in Santa Cruz, and about 5 of us were developing in that office in Aptos. And that's when I was working on Bugs Bunny, which got completed there, and then they play tested it against Snoopy and the Red Baron with 14-year-old boys, and it wasn't really fair to have play Bugs Bunny or Snoopy and the Red Baron, so you could guess which one was more popular. So they shelved Bugs Bunny then. And shortly after that, I worked a little bit on Holy Moly also, using the keypad. That never really got released either. And then there was the downfall of the Tremills taking over the company and everyone leaving at the time. So that's about it with Atari. But after that, I started working on other platforms, such as the Apple II and the Commodore 64, and I started doing educational gaming. but then there was a resurrection of the video games, probably due to Nintendo. So I started doing some more 2600 projects as a consultant and contractor. I guess first with Mediagenics, which was also called Activision. They were in Menlo Park. And then I did a few more at Atari as a contractor. So that would be Rampage with Mediagenics, and then Roadrunner, and then the diagonal scrolling game. I forgot what it was called, but that was also with Atari. So that's about it with the Atari development.
Yeah.
I later got into working on the Super Nintendo, and Sony PlayStation, and I'm still doing games today, but they're apps for the different tablets and other devices.
Are you doing it independently or for?
I've developed 15 of my own apps.
Wow.
That are out on the market, but I'm also doing consulting for other companies, working on apps for them. One of them in particular would be for retro gaming. We did Chicken Shift for them.
Mm-hmm.
And currently I'm doing some consulting work for Morphonics. And those are educational products that are being developed in Unity for all the different platforms.
So of the stuff that you've published yourself, what's the most popular app that you've done?
World Geography, which is the fallback that I always...
Wait, you did that for Atari like 100 years ago.
No, actually I did it in the 80s on the Commodore 64. Then I did it on the Apple II, just back in the 80s. And then I self-published it myself then. But then I got into Java development with in Livermore for Lasertron, and so I got into Java development then. And then when the devices came out, the Android and the BlackBerry, the first project I worked on was doing World Geography again, because I was familiar with it. It was my own product. I didn't have to get any licenses or anything for it. So that's the project that I always fall back on, and it's probably my biggest seller because I have it in 6 different languages: Spanish, Italian, Chinese, Japanese, German, and English. Is that 5 or 6? Probably.
I think that's 6.
So out of the 15 apps, most of them are for World Geography.
All right. So I've seen many interviews with you, and most of them tend to concentrate on your 2600 stuff, which is fine. But I'm an 8-bit guy, so I would like to do a more deep dive into the stuff you did for the Atari 8-bit. So you're credited with States and Capitals. Was that something Atari decided they wanted done, and then?
I don't know how I got started on that exactly, but it morphed into European countries and capitals. Mm-hmm. And my project World Geography was kind of based on that whole principle of having just multiple choice and random selections of various states, and then it got into the European countries. And so when I did World Geography, it was the whole world, and it had 175 countries. So it was kind of based on that idea. It would be a geography quiz type thing.
Mm-hmm. Atari later also came out with APX Atlas of Canada, which is clearly the same engine, but you're not credited with that one.
No, I'm not too familiar with that either.
Sounds like someone just went in and used your engine and changed it to Canada.
Well, somebody got that idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Lemonade. Again, was that your idea, or was that a directive from
No,
Atari?
it was just based on some. It was some basic code that was already out there, and I kind of used that as a template and recoded it for the machine. So I mean, there was already a version out there, but it was just text driven.
Right. I was familiar with a version on the Apple that I think shipped with the machine.
Yeah.
And,
so it was kind of a public domain game that was already out there, and it was a good place to start.
And then you did Mugwump, APX 20005, so still very early in the catalog.
Mugwump, I forgot about that one.
Tell me about Mugwump.
It was kind of a game where you're looking for something that's hidden in a puzzle type project. I don't remember too much about it, though.
It's kind of a battleship thing.
Yeah,
I think.
something like that.
And then Preschool Games.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Reversi, Othello sort of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was based on Othello, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And then Space Trek.
Yeah, well, they couldn't get Atari. They couldn't get Star Trek, so they called it Space Trek.
Was that sort of loosely based on there was another early mainframe game called Star Trek that was all ASCII, and it seems like you were kind of going to that well of computer programs that were already sort of public domain.
Yeah, there was already a lot of stuff out there, and then I had to redo them for the Atari. Maybe add some graphics, but yeah, we're really going back, and I don't even remember too much on how those things started.
Sorry, I have that effect on people. I get that answer a lot. I don't remember. And the last APX title that I have here you did was Dice Poker, which is basically Yahtzee, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember doing that one either, but the name sounds familiar though.
Yeah. So
basically filled up the catalog, and then they had to move on.
Right. Well, once they had the first catalog, I think they could get user submissions, which was the whole point. But they needed to prime it with something, I think. Yeah. Was it fun?
The whole Atari period was really fun. It was basically a bunch of us around the same age bracket, working crazy hours, partying, having a good time, and working hard, and doing games. I mean, and that's what it was all about. You know, a lot of the programmers had come from other backgrounds, doing maybe some boring engineering type projects, and to be able to use our skills to make games was a lot more rewarding than working on something that would never get seen by anybody.
Sure. Did you ever get feedback from users, from players back then? Or were you pretty insulated? It's not like you're getting fan mail, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there was a few interviews I did, but pretty much the players, I never heard from them except when I guess someone at some point found the Easter egg that I put into Defender that I hadn't told anybody about, which was almost 6 months after release, which was the 25th line. In the 25th wave, if you hold the spaceship there, the aliens turn into my initials.
Did you get in trouble with management when they found out?
No, because that was after Warren Robinette's adventure game, and at that time, they were starting to request that we put in Easter eggs, which kind of took the whole idea away. It was supposed to be hidden, and yet it ended up being part of the design at some point.
Right. Once it becomes a mandate, it becomes less
Well,
intriguing, right?
one of the the engineers actually didn't like it when we first started doing that. As far as management is concerned, because they felt that if we had enough room to add an Easter egg, we had enough room to add more stuff into the game. Because you would basically fill up the ROM with code and make sure there's nothing left. I mean, I think I had maybe 6 bytes left in the whole game. So, yeah. But there really wasn't enough room to add more code. The Easter egg didn't take up much code at all.
Yeah. What haven't I asked you that I should have?
Basically, you know what I'm doing now, and I don't really have much to add to that hasn't been said. The games that were released later, such as Bugs Bunny and Holy Moly and Stunt Cycle, and those games were all released through prototypes that were out there that just got remanufactured. And it was better than just having a game never get released. And it was a good way to get some projects out there that would otherwise never be seen.
Cool. Last question, I think. If you could send a message to the Atari computer users who played your lemonades and mugwumps and things back in the day, if you could send them a message, and you can right now, what would you tell them?
Well, pretty much write your own games. Because all that stuff is still out there. There's those machines that are still in BASIC, and you could make your own games out there. And if you want to get into machine language programming, it's a much different animal. So it's pretty much not comparable. That's better.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
All righty. All right, take it easy.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.